Welcome, listeners, as we take flight on another episode of Railfan Landon Podcast Edition. As always, I'm Lance Dome, and with me is
Railfan Landon.
So the built-in pun on taking flight has to do with today's topic.
Yep.
Today we're going to look at Pan Am Railway. Really interesting history on this one. The first chance for your folks who listen who are really into airlines and taking flight to make a connection with the rail industry, right?
Yep.
So, do you want to work this from most recent back, or do you want to go back in time and do the history on it?
Let's go back in time to the history on it.
All right. People know the term Pan Am, but they don't necessarily initially attribute that to trains, right?
Yes.
Rather, they think of Pan American World Airlines. Fly with us, right?
Yep.
A well-known airline from, I think, the early years of flight for your everyday consumer, if you will. Again, it was kind of swanky, but yeah. So, Landon, tell us a little bit about kind of the transition from airline to railway.
Well, airline ended and went in bankruptcy, and as a Pan Am, and went in bankruptcy in, what was it, 1998 it was.
98.
98.
What started in 81?
That was the transition of it starting to business, and then the Guilford Railroad was the start of that. And quite like 20 years later is when Pan Am started, in 2006, a little more than 20 years.
So Guilford Rail bought out Pan Am, or
No.
took on the name?
The Guilford Railroad got bought out by Pan Am.
Okay. And then Pan Am changed the name.
So like to start in 1998,
Okay.
and then shortly after Pan Am Airline went out of business,
Yep.
they acquired the original paint scheme of the airplanes you used to see on Pan Am Airline.
For your listeners, that's a very iconic logo as well.
Yep.
If you look that up, you'll see it and it'll be like, yeah, that's right. I know that Pan Am logo. It is an iconic logo. It really speaks to kind of the nostalgia of airlines. It is the 1960s, right? It's swanky. It's your stewardesses, with those perfectly groomed dresses that match, and bringing drinks and bringing actual edible meals.
Yeah.
If you have airline food now, you know that joke. Because airline food now is not known for its quality. But when air flight started, when they started providing common everyday folks with the ability to go on these trips and vacations, the flight itself was part of that. And that's how Pan Am built its name and built its logo, right?
Yes.
And that over time, the airline industry changed. And they failed.
Yep.
And it became defunct, right? It was done. We're closed up. But they didn't just give up.
Yeah, they started a railroad line, officially started in 2006.
And to this day, it's a great railway, right?
Not so much anymore. They got a lot of, don't mean to get into too much politics here, but from the local government there in New York and Maine area, they really got criticized for dumping ties in government property.
That got them in trouble.
Yeah, that's what caused them to go out of bankruptcy. Then shortly after, CSX bought them out.
Stepped in, bought them out,
Yep. And
acquired their stuff,
Yep.
slapped their own paint on, the blue and yellow that we know well, and away we go, yeah?
Yeah, well, it's going to take a couple more years until they get all their engines back in the CSX, and some of them, they're so old that they just scrap them and use them for parts.
So what year was it that CSX acquired the Pan Am Railway fully?
It was in 2022.
Okay, so we're
pretty
talking
recent.
very recent, really. I mean, what do you think of that? Before I started doing this with you, I really honestly I did not know how frequently different railways were changing hands, and I think it's something that, unfortunately, again, not to get political on this podcast, but it seems like with the current state of affairs in our country, it's likely to keep happening. Correct?
Yes.
You know, and again, that's another podcast to discuss how, why, and what that means for the future. But for Pan Am, it meant the end, right?
Yep.
Hey, can you tell me a little bit about where Pan Am was running? You mentioned kind of that East Coast, upper East Coast,
Yep.
New England, upper New England. Where did they all have, where were they all running lines? Where was it?
It was most of their customers were mixed freight customers. Like one of them was big oil refinery up in Maine. A couple of them actually.
So were they actually running oil then? Or
Not just oil. In upstate New York area, they also ran intermodal, like shipping containers, with conjunction with Norfolk Southern and CXX.
Makes sense, seaboard type stuff, right?
Yeah.
Ships come in, unload, toss on the train, away you go. Okay.
Yep.
How far west did they run then? About, do you know that?
Ooh, from
And maybe to be a little more blunt, would we have seen them near where we are, which is, the Michigan, down through Chicago?
no, we wouldn't
area?
see them. There's mainly upstate New York all the way to Maine, but now that CXX acquired them back in 2022, you might see a few older units, but they won't be running. They'll probably be going to their Waycross, Georgia, where they scrap locomotives and use them for parts more sadly, but that's what happens.
Yeah. I have mixed feelings on that.
Yeah.
Obviously, refinishing and housing a train, right, a locomotive and its cars, that is, it's a lot of space, a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I suppose a lot of the thinking on that too is like, well, if we can reuse the materials and, rebirth into something that we can use, maybe that's the case. But obviously for the folks who are really love the trains and wish to see them around for the future, that's maybe not the same feeling, huh?
Yep.
Guess we're getting deep on this episode. Well, that's all right, man. Hey, everybody's in it for different reasons, and I can't look down on people who really love them and wish to see them live on for future generations. So is there anything else you wanted to discuss as far as Pan Am goes? I know we actually got on this topic because we've been looking through some books, some really good publications, and you showed me some pictures. I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Because again, personally, I knew of Pan Am from the airlines, not necessarily from the train aspect, because they ran in the east as well. So it wasn't like I was just going to see them riding through my neighborhood. So anyway, anything else on that you wanted to discuss?
I believe that is it.
All right. Well, we always welcome comments on the below if you have some extra information about Pan Am or the greater good of things. Otherwise, I guess we're ready to sign off, huh?
Yep.
All right, as always, I'm Lance Doma, signing off, and my friend,
Railfan Landon out.